Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. Today, I'm thrilled to bring you my interview with the creator of Davey and Jonesie's Locker herself, Evany Rosen. Evany's known in the world of comedy for her founding role in the comedy troupe Picnic Face, and she now brings her unique blend of humor and creativity to the realm of science fiction teen comedy. Davey and Jonesie's Locker is the story of two high schoolers who stumble upon a locker that serves as a gateway to the multiverse. Join us as Evany delves into the inception of this imaginative series, the magic behind its creation, and what it's like to work with an incredible cast. This episode is a must listen for fans and newcomers alike, offering a peek into the creative process that brings such a vibrant, fantastic show to life. It's a great interview, and I hope you enjoy.
Hi, Les. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for making time today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So I just got to finish watching, I guess a couple of days ago, we finished binging through all of Davey and Jonesy. Uh, what a freaking hilarious show. Like, that's great
Thank
job.
you.
Just all around, everybody nailed it. Um,
Oh, thank you.
I was excited to talk to you because I can imagine there's just so many tiny right decisions that had to pile up to get such like a joyously I don't know, in sync with itself. I guess no plot pun intended there. Um, Show. Can you talk a little bit about where the idea came from and where you were at, creating it and writing it? Did you already know some of the actors you had in mind at this point? I mean, obviously, you had a pretty good idea how uh, the actor would play principal Neighbors. But anybody else, did you have them in mind already?
That's my big scam. um, yeah, I mean, it was like with the younger members of the cast. I didn't. That was like there was comedians who Dan Byrne was such a great fit, and I've known him for years. Who plays Schneider, and so as soon as he auditioned, we were like, oh, so perfect. And James Hartnett, who plays Andy, who is also secretly my husband. I had written that role with him in mind. So some of the older cast are like comedians I knew and had in mind. Emily Pigford, who plays Cheryl, was in my last show, New Eden. But with the younger cast, it was a really big casting process, and especially for Davey and Jonesy, we just knew that chemistry had to be so great. And Veronica Solokowska, Allison, the director, and I were kind of aware of as comedians, as she's so funny. So when she taped for Davey, it was so perfect, and we were like, we just have to find the right fit. And then as soon as we saw Jalen's tape, we were just like, okay, I think this is going to work. And we did their chemistry read, and it was over Zoom, and it was like they'd known each other their whole lives. It was amazing. So that it was a fun process of having some comedians in mind for certain roles, and then getting to discover this whole young cast who are just, I love them all so much. So that's sort of the casting piece. And then in terms of the idea, I had been talking with AJ Trask at Marble Media, and we were wanting to work together on something. And I had been talking about how I wanted to do, a lot of my work is about female relationships in different capacities and female friendships. And I really wanted to, in thinking about doing a teen show, I really wanted to make a show that I wished had been on as a young pre-comedian when I was a kid. And wanting to make a show that was girl-centric, but sort of unapologetically funny first, which I feel like isn't maybe always the space we put teen girls in on TV. I think often we want girls to kind of have a painful coming-of-age time. And I really wanted to make a show where there were these two best friends who had already had it dialed. They knew exactly who they were. They did not need to figure that out. And it was the rest of the world that was, again, pun intended, out of sync with them. So I had been sort of noodling on that. And then AJ kind of just brought me this title. And he was just like, Davey and Jonesie's Locker. You will of that. In the high school, there's a couple, Davey and Jonesie, something's going on with their locker. So I started noodling. And this multiverse idea kind of came to me because I really love sci-fi and I really love to play with genre. And I just thought, oh, what a fun thing to map on to like a really campy comedy first kind of show.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that I couldn't play with an MCU kind of budget in terms of my multiverse, it started to evolve in terms of, okay, how would John Waters do the multiverse, and getting into this like campy shape and then here we are.
Well, so in terms of like choices that I know had to have been partly driven by budget, even in the writing phase, but are just ingenious. All teen high school things kind of feel like the high school's the only place that exists. Like, half of these shows, we never really go. Really go all the way home. And then there's stuff like Community, where is Meow Meow Beans happening in the whole world? How does Greendale operate? In Davey and Jonesie, there's such a solid, confident choice that the high school is the world. Full stop. I don't know what's happening outside of there. It doesn't matter. This is the microcosm. If we're wearing jewels around our necks, I assume so is the president somewhere. Was there a conscious moment where you were like, nothing outside these walls?
Yes, very much so. Because it felt like, I mean, really, I just like, bless you for saying that all the choices really came together, because I just know Reddit's going to come for me on all the plot holes. But I felt very early on in the writer's room, we were like, as soon as you take some of these premises and start to contemplate how that affects the world at large, it falls apart. And there's a way that it all has to be in this microcosm, and that kind of makes it funnier. And there was a way that, even from a practical standpoint, with all the departments, the sandbox of that became both a challenge, but kind of a joy to play in. Because you could cram some very big ideas into a very small and kind of banal space.
The Oranges episode just nearly broke me. That is just such a, like, almost a dare of an episode of like, you're just going to have to believe it. These kids are getting wailed on by these oranges. And like watching all the actors get to flail on the floor. I also have an orange cat named Julius, so I laughed at that joke.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Love it. Yeah, that's actually funny you mentioned that. That's the first episode I wrote, because I was lucky enough, and I'm sure I'll never have this again in my career, but I was lucky enough to sell this show to Hulu in the Room, which was exciting but also intimidating, because usually, you get some development and you write a couple scripts and you're coming to your writer's room with some scripts and some rubric for everybody. But we got greenlit off the pitch. So I was like, oh, this show's already so weird. How am I going to explain this to the writers? So I was like, I got to write an episode just like as my own private development, to come in and have something to show everybody, to work as a starting point. And that was one of the first ideas I had for a multiverse, because I was like, it's just so stupid. Because the premise of the episode is they just go to a world that seems exactly like their own, except the only food anyone eats is oranges. And they're like, it's so boring. But then it turns out that the oranges are sentient, and it's kind of, and then I just wanted it to get so elaborate. So that was the first episode I wrote to kind of be like, this is what the show is. Sorry.
I don't necessarily want to spoil the twist for anybody that hasn't watched it at home, but the No Music Universe episode has a twist that, I laughed out loud. I did not see that being the reason why we were not having music. Was there a moment in the writer's room where you knew you got the tone right and everybody was on the same page, and you heard an idea come back where you went, oh my God, that didn't come from me, but that is so Davey and Jonesie?
Oh, for sure. There's so many moments like that, but that one in particular, and I won't spoil it either, but there is, let's say, a bizarrely recognizable song at the end of that episode that kind of ties it together. And we were brainstorming what that song could be. And the idea is that it's the Schneider, who is the teacher who's secretly a physicist who's put the portal in their locker. It's what is his true heart song, and he won't admit it. And then it finally gets revealed. And when I think it was Steph Callender, who was my co-EP, who finally, I can just press play on that on her computer. And that it was one of those room breaking moments where we were all just sobbing, laughing. We couldn't get a hold of ourselves. And that was one of those magic moments where you're like, okay, yeah, this is what it is. And we had to aggressively pursue the rights to that song for many months.
That's great. There's so many things that go into I think they go into getting a show made the way that it ought to be made that I don't think I understood when I was younger and watching TV. At some point you realize somebody writes this and people act it, and you want good writers and good actors, but it's so much more than that. There's so many lucky breaks on days and set design and art direction and everybody getting in the same tone, kind of in a unified thing. Was there a best day on set or a favorite universe that you decorated for where you walked around and were like, and if my people see this, they will be thrilled. This is the show we want to make. Did you have a favorite reality?
I, it's hard to pick a favorite. There's episode 4 is called Beyond Hunger Dome, and it is a bit of a mashup of sort of Mad Max and Hunger Games and a bunch of other things. It's really stupid and really elaborate. And Bruce McDonald, who's such an incredible director, and I was so lucky to work with. That was the first episode he shot for us, and seeing that set come together, which is one of our biggest set pieces, was a pretty incredible moment. So that one was really exciting. And then the other one, I don't want to reveal too much because the way this is a spoiler, but there, I think it gets revealed at the end of episode 1, but there is a lobster kind of situation, which comes back into play later in the season. Around. I won't say when. Yeah. So the episode where it comes back around was maybe one of my favorites, just because of the twist there and how much kind of genre send up we got to do. But the number of meetings that I had in prep, where it was like literally looking at my prep schedule on the day and being like, well, we got another lobster meeting. Like there was literally, like, usually it's like a meeting or an art department meeting, but then in this case it was so specific that it was like, and the lobster meeting. And Ron Stefaniak, who is our creature guy and who's like a legend, and he's so amazing, an incredible puppeteer, and who made those lobsters for us. Finally seeing that come together and being like, we did it, because it was like one of the more expensive, complicated things that I was like, we got to get these lobsters right. And I just can't believe how much we talked about lobsters, and I'm saying the word lobster. But that in particular for me, and the way that it looked is exactly how I imagined it looking, just kind of uncanny valley, bizarre, human lobster. That's all I'll say. Gotta watch, but that one was a big one for me. That was the lobsters were a triumph.
I know there can be moments when you're thinking up silly stuff, and especially when it's, meeting reality and hitting real budget moments and stuff, where you could be like, man, is this lobster joke worth it? And thank you so much for sticking with it all. It's all worth it, and I loved seeing every single moment of it.
Bless you.
But I know there had to be moments of like, oh God, this is the 8th lobster meeting. Is this the crustacean hill I die on?
Yes. And it was, and that was the hill I died on. That was, I feel like, the one thing where everyone was like, what if we didn't? And I went, we have to. I'm sorry.
At this point,
we have to do it. We have to. I'm in too deep on this. But yeah, and it is so crazy when you're show running, especially something that is as campy and weird as this and so silly, but you have to take those things seriously. There's budget implications and a lot of people involved in all kinds of things, but you're having these really serious, tear your hair out meetings about something that when you step back, you're like, this is so stupid what we're talking about. We're talking about how we can get 3,000 oranges on set by next week. And we're talking about it really seriously, and it's a problem. And this kind of thing is sort of the fun of making television in a lot of ways.
I loved where it leaves off at season 1. I thought it was an exceptional bit of a status quo reset, readying everything. You could see the story engine for season 2. Is there a plan for more?
We hope so. Fingers crossed, of course. But yeah, certainly I did try to set up that there could be more and more story to come with the twist at the end of the season. And thank you for that. I appreciate it. Because, season finale, pilots and season finales are the hardest thing. And landing that plane was was a choppy ride. But I really love that episode. And I really appreciate that. And I think just some of the performances in that episode around the turns are some of my favorites in the show.
No, it was wonderful.
So I hope we get to see what happens.
Yeah, it really it's both silly and funny, and it really got me at the character moments. Like you said, Davey and Jonesy pretty much have their stuff locked down, but there are moments where they, are tested a little bit, and it's
Mhm.
always affecting. Yeah, really enjoyed this show. Thank you so much for making it.
Thank you so much, Les. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. This is such a delight.
I'll have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thanks so much. Bye.
TV Dudes is an independently run podcast out of Austin, Texas. We are exclusively listener supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/TVDudes.
You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at TV Dudes. All the music for our show is done by our friend and original TV Dude Gregory J. Amani Smith.
To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com. I'm Randy Lander.
I'm Les Weiler.
And I'm Kyle Scott.
Thanks for listening.